Dr. Besner, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Listen, I got to start with this because I noticed this when I was doing a little bit of research. We share the same alma mater at Boston University. So go Terriers.
Yes. I didn't know that. Holy mackerel.
I didn't know it either. And then I read it and I knew you grew up in Long Island. We have the same, listen, we followed paths a little bit there. How'd you like BU? How'd you like BU? Pre-med too, God. That's tough.
I did BU undergrad. I'll date myself because it was 69, 70, just after. So my first week of orientation, we were flooding Commonwealth Avenue, protesting the Vietnam War and doing sit-ins, and the Boston police had their riot gear on. And, here I am taking pictures with my Nikon cameras, sending them to my parents about my first week at BU. And they're going, oh my God, It was quite an experience. I loved my undergraduate work. I had a lot of different ideas about what I was looking to do. And I started actually in the business school, and that was my first, probably the first semester or so, first maybe 2 semesters. I transferred to the liberal arts school, and then I just started, I did a dual track, both psychology and biology. So I did self-taught engineering. I am a device developer and co-founder of Therisage, our company. Mm-hmm. And so somehow, through our own journey, personal journey, I was able to sort of find myself in a place where most of my skill sets I learned, moving up, have been utilized as I see today, reaching somewhat like I would say full potential, or as close as I can get to that. But BU was amazing, and I loved Boston. I mean, oh my goodness. My last year there, I lived actually in Cambridge, and right behind Radcliffe, or next to Radcliffe, behind Harvard Law.
Yep.
And that was when National Lampoon, that was the years when they actually came down Mass Ave in a big tank. And oh yeah, it was an epic period in history in general, but certainly for me in my own journey.
I mean, Boston is an amazing college town, right? So much going on there, and to be able to live that city life at that time, I was a little bit different time and different things going on, but still such an amazing city. And I read that, I kind of laughed. It was like, go Terriers, yeah. But you continued your path on. You went pre-med, and then you continued your path on into medicine. But you had some events in your life, especially afflicting your daughter, that kind of changed your directory a little bit. Can you get into that and what happened?
Well, post-grad, I was in Cleveland, and there at the Cleveland Clinic, I worked in the laboratories. We were doing work with, we actually discovered fatty liver, which wasn't, now it's pretty mainstream, but back then, there wasn't a correlation between the way that the liver disease and alcoholism was what the angle that we found. And also we were doing a lot of work with open heart, development of open heart surgery, or the valves that they use currently in open heart surgery, we were working on way back then. I left the allopathic track, the MD track, after about a year because I didn't use the words then, but now I would say it didn't quite resonate for me. And so I'm more of an integrated functional practitioner and a naturopath in my approach, and really has been fitting my lifestyle all the way through. As I retired, took a leave from medical school, Case Western, I then pursued some business activities for a few years, built and retired. And in the middle of that, I started my young family, and my oldest child, my daughter, in her early teens, contracted Lyme disease, which was an opportunity for me to actually go back into my medical skills sets. And I took apart the way she was presenting herself, which was basically high levels of toxicity. I saw levels of inflammation in her body. She was expressing pain, and she had cognitive challenges. And so when I started to unpack all of that, and I looked at the things that I felt that I could impact in her life and giving her some kind of guidance, I focused on toxicity. When I took that apart in research, I looked at all the modern forms and then discovered that there are actually light frequencies that will mobilize all the toxins in your body. And that really interested me because at that time, and I'm talking about the infrared spectrum of frequencies of electromagnetic fields that come from sun. Mm-hmm. And so when I looked at that part of it, the infrared therapies weren't mainstream. And again, now we're talking 25, 28 years ago, okay? It wasn't mainstream. It was basically used in the medical community by sports medicine doctors to lower pain thresholds of the players that were injured and help expedite, along with other methods, like synergistic methods, to get the player healed and back on the field. And so that stuff intrigued me, but what really grabbed me was the mobilizing of toxins, because I felt that that was one of the root causes of my daughter's symptoms. And when I looked at that, really what I did was I organized a trip. I went over to Asia. I spent a better part of 2 months, interviewed close to 50 different factories and found 3 that I liked, then circled into one or centered on one. And at that point, I just started developing devices mostly for home use. Mm-hmm. And she was actually Dr. Joseph Virascano in East Hampton or Southampton then. Mm-hmm. He had a viable practice. My daughter was being treated by him. Dr. Virascano saw that Julia was having such amazing results from some of the devices we were developing. He asked that we start making them for him in his practice, hence the genesis of the beginning of our company, Therisage.
And now Therisage has a number of practice, but a lot of it involves far infrared or infrared technology. And could you walk us through the difference between near versus far infrared and also red light therapy? Because people sometimes lump that all together. And I find that that's not really the best case, and that's not the way we should be doing that. It's not like light therapy is all the same, and even infrared is quite a broad range. So could you kind of educate us into that area of infrared?
Okay, so if we look at the full range of energies that come from sun, going from the left side, which is probably the most impactful to life on the planet, all life, to the most benign, you start with gamma rays, then X-rays, then you go into the UV light spectrum, then the natural light, which is the rainbow, what we see, our visible light spectrum. Then you go into the invisible light spectrums, which would be the infrared spectrum next, then microwaves. And then after that, we have radio waves. So that's kind of the full gambit. Now, dialing in a little bit further on the infrared spectrum, our approach as a company is sort of a page out of the playbook from nature. All of our devices that we develop, they use the full spectrum approach, which is the 3 wavelengths, the near, mid, and far wavelengths of the infrared spectrum, which is different than red, by the way, mm-hmm. The red light. That comes before red, blue, green, and purple, and so different frequencies. And it's the best way I can equate it is sort of like dialing in a radio station, 107.5. These light frequencies have specific, really scientifically defined wavelengths, and they are measured in what's called a nanometer. When you get up past 1,000 nanometers, it's called a micron. And so the infrared spectrum is everything from around 600 nanometers all the way out to 20,000 nanometers or 20 microns. And a full spectrum approach, as we do with our devices, actually captures about 96% of that full range. We go from 600 to 14,000 nanometers or 14 microns. And in doing so, we cast sort of a big net, because the body and in nature, the reason why nature, our deliverer, sun, delivers all these frequencies is because basically everything, every form of life, both in the plant and animal kingdom, can benefit from every single one of those wavelengths. Now, in the Western approach or allopathic approach to medicine, we sort of compartmentalize things like near versus far, and this specific red versus blue light, and all that. And there's some merit, academic discussion as to why there are different wavelengths and what these wavelengths do. And in our infrared sauna and healing pads and things we make, we use full spectrum because we want to cast a big net, because in our bodies, the way we process these frequencies, it's sort of like vitamin C. You can not well, you can overexpose yourself to vitamin C, take a lot of it, but whatever your body doesn't use, it sort of just expels. And it's the same thing with light frequencies. They absorb in our tissues, they absorb in our cells on an actual cell level. And when we get completely absorbed, then we let those frequencies go. It's part of what's called homeostasis, or creating somewhat of a balance in the body, both from an energy point of view, from a light frequency point of view, and from a heat point of view, like a body temperature, core temperature point of view. And so you really can't get overexposed to infrared frequencies, but your body will take everything it needs in terms of its deficiencies in order for the body to operate. And if you can really break down our body battery and our body energy to the smallest degree, we're really kind of light beings. And so being energized by light and by sun every day is a very important component in order for us to maintain all of our systems' health, not just one particular area.
And, when you talk about the sauna itself, how does an IR infrared compare to traditional saunas? Because a lot of people say, like, I love the sauna. Like, what's the point of, an IR sauna when I could just go to the spa and sit in one of those?
Yeah, IR meaning infrared. Sure.
Yeah.
I write that a lot, and I'm always corrected. What do you mean IR? Yeah, infrared.
We're a little advanced.
People know traditional saunas, like if we were in the Baltic countries of Europe, they'd be talking about Swedish saunas, which are hot rock. Those work on what's called convection heat, meaning that you have a heating element, the hot rock or whatever, and or even a steam room is in that category, where you have an element that's generating heat, that's heating the ambient air between the heating element and your body. And then that hot air touches your skin, and then over time it penetrates through the insulating layer of fat under your skin, causing your body temperature, your core temperature start to elevate. In order for convection heat to work effectively, they have to be at pretty high temperatures, 185 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know about you, but is it easy? Have you ever been in a steam room?
Oh, I have. Yeah. Yeah. We have one of those. My parents have one upstate. And yeah, once it hits that 180, that's tough.
Is it easy for you to breathe in that sauna?
No, you got to kind of do this very slow breathing, because if you breathe quickly, it's like a burst of like fire in your lungs a little bit, right? You got to control it. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, infrared works on a different principle. It's actually radiant heat. It's a wavelength. It's a frequency. So it doesn't actually heat up the ambient air. The wavelengths are seeking the densest parts of our bodies, which would be our muscle mass or our organ density, our organ tissues. And so it actually penetrates seamlessly into our body and seamlessly through that insulating layer of fat, because this is kind of a cool thing that everybody can tune into today. The frequencies within the infrared spectrum actually harmonize or resonate at the same frequency as the water inside of your body. Whoa, that's a big one. Okay.
That is.
So about maybe 74 to 78% of a fat molecule is water. And so the reason why the hot rock sauna or steam room has to work hard to get into the body, because it's not resonating at the same frequency. It has to actually work hard to penetrate that insulating layer just under our skin, which protects our insides from extreme heat or extreme cold. Where light energy comes right through that insulating layer and starts to resonate, we call it bioresonate or vibrate, in these organs, your organs or your muscle tissue, which also happen to be the most vascular parts of your body. And so that vibration liberates energy and heat, which warms up the vessels that surround those areas, which are the most vascular areas. And that's really probably the first health modality that is greatly enhanced, because when you warm up a vessel, it dilates. That's called vasodilation. Now we can get it's kind of like going on the Long Island Expressway during rush hour, and there's an accident on lane 4, so they close down 4, 3, and 2. So now you've got a whole bunch of people that are angry trying to get home, and the traffic is consolidated to one lane. That's a constricted vessel. When you have a vessel that's dilated, it's like after they've gone past the accident or the lane closing, and now we've gone from 1 lane to 5 lanes or 4 lanes. Boom, your blood, or the cars start moving pretty fast. And that's a metabolic enhancement. And that is improving. So your metabolic rate, we're moving more blood, which carries all of your healing properties. It carries all your nutrition, and it carries oxygen at probably something like 15 to almost 20% at a much higher rate. So because of that, there's a weight thinning or weight loss effect from using infrared sauna. And mostly it's anti-aging, because one of the big reasons why we age is from oxidative stress. As we get older, our bodies actually get starved. Our blood gets starved of oxygen. So anything you can do to improve blood flow and oxygenation flow is, as they say in Texas, a chicken winner dinner.
And I love that analogy as someone that's driven on the LIE a lot, Long Island Expressway, and knows there's always an accident that closes lanes 4, 3, and 2. So you have that constriction, and you have that frustration, and you have an unhappy driver. So you want to open those up as much as possible. But let's talk about the difference of Therisage infrared versus, there's a lot of other companies now. It's almost becoming like a crowded industry, you could say. I see it all the time in just ads and, everything, and patients coming to us. What do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? How does Therisage compare? What is the unique selling proposition of the Therisage infrared sauna?
It's a good question. We do make traditional wood saunas, by the way, and we make a great one. And people that are looking for that, we make a good one. And the things to be concerned about are the woods that are being used, because all imported woods are sprayed with chemicals to prevent insects and bacteria from foreign countries to come into the US, So that's where you start. But really our flagship is our portable sauna, because when we were making wooden saunas, and this goes back 20 plus years, what I did was I farmed my wood in Canada, so Canadian cedar. I sent it to China. It then was tooled into a cabinet, and then the electronics were put in, and then that was assembled, and it was sent here in a kit to the US, and then we were distributing them. So as I started diving deeper into infectious disease and people that had chemical sensitivities and food allergies and so forth, it became very clear to me, because I was super smart. See, my woods were sprayed twice, out of Canada into China and out of China into the US. So understanding, as soon as I became cognizant of that, I said, no, this is not going to work in my community. And at the very same time, succinctly, it was interesting, because when we introduced our wooden saunas, what I heard, because as a device developer, I kind of leave my ego outside, and I make all of our devices with very specific intent. But then I put it out there, and I listen to what the average consumer, what the lay person is concerned about. And what I heard was this: I really want a wooden sauna, but I live on Park Avenue. I have $1 million apartment, and it's 700 square feet, and I can't fit a wooden sauna. It just doesn't fit in my space. Or I heard from someone in Minnesota, I've got all the space in the world, a big basement, big backyard, and all that, but I can't afford a wooden sauna that may cost, a good one is $4,000 or $5,000. So something around $1,000 and is space saving. That was my concept, when we developed the pop-up or the portable format, which actually has taken the world by storm. We are probably considered the top leader in that, humbly said, in that format. What is unique about our portable sauna is something special. It really is. We call it the Thera 360 Plus, because basically when you're sitting in the seat, your body is bathing in frequency all around you. We use a special formulation for our full spectrum approach that you get in there. And the 360 Plus has our new tri-light, near and red light system. And I didn't really complete our answer about red light before, but I'm going to come back to it through the tri-light explanation. And we use natural gemstones. So there's actually tourmaline stones that are farmed from one of the blue zones in the world. And a blue zone, for people just tuning in, is where centurions live, people that the average lifespan is greater than 100 years. And I had the opportunity to visit 2 of the 6 blue zones on the planet personally. And that's when I brought some scientific devices with me, and I'm figuring, why do people live past 100 years old? I just was so intrigued with longevity. And I discovered that one of these villages was in the center of China. I traveled 22 hours by bus into the interior from one of the coastal cities to find this place. I think I probably still hold the trophy as being one of the only male Caucasians that have ever visited this area. And what I discovered was that the amount of negative ions was 20,000 times greater than normal air. So what is negative ion? Negative ion is basically earth charge. And the way it happens in nature is when running water moves over land, that friction frees up these electrons, which is a negative charge, same as the earth charge. And I think that was the key to the longevity. And what was interesting about this village was there was no running water. The closest tributary, which in the interior of China, the way that they get goods from the factories to mainland was basically through some kind of river or, by not, well, back in the day, it was done on water. Now they do land traveling, but this was a pretty rural area that I was at, frankly. I discovered that this particular village was actually built on a mound of this tourmaline, and that's the tourmaline that we farm and we put inside our sauna because of the content of negative ions. So we also electrically ground. So we have like a big grounding mat is the way that sauna is set up. We have the negative ions from the tourmaline. We're full spectrum infrared. We have the tri-light systems in front. All of our materials are organic. We use natural bamboo materials. There's no VOCs, which are volatile chemicals that happen when things get heated up. So there's no off-gassing. And we also protect against exogenous frequencies, EMFs and ELFs, extreme low frequencies. And so I'm sort of super proud of that device because it's the Mac Daddy. And even though you can buy a sauna for $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, the wooden ones, and they're really beautiful, and the wood craftsmanship is amazing. In terms of therapy, that little portable sauna for around $1,000 is probably the best infrared sauna you can get on the planet. Again, humbly said.
No, I think you should be proud of that because we've tested a lot at the center, and my father is a quality freak when it comes to these things and what he, recommends to patients. And, when he sent me, hey, look into Therisage and let's start to get these and recommend them to patients, I took that to heart, and that's why I needed to connect. And it was almost serendipitous when you were in Miami at the same conference I was at, and then now we're here. But I have one. It's literally right over there, about 6 feet away, that I use. And now I want to get into the usage a little bit. Yes. Because let's say, let's start with a normal person that's just looking at detox, looking to improve and optimize their health. What would the usage be there? Because you have certain times, and I've even been asked, because I've been posting the pictures of me sitting with my head popped out of one, and people say, what's the temperature and how long do you do it? And I'm like, I change it around and I go 20, 30 minutes if I have time at 150, and then I'll do 120 if it's after a workout, I'm ready, really heated. But what would be your kind of recommended just go-to setting to start using this? How many times a week also?
Great question. Man, you're really knocking it out of the park today with these questions, frankly.
Thank you.
Super happy. When you get, as a company, I don't believe it's enough just to make a really cool device. I think it's important to understand how to use the device in order to get your optimal result. And when you buy an infrared sauna or you buy a healing pad that has infrared technology that we make, we also send you a best practice optimal reference guide, which is about 14 pages. Don't get scared. It's mostly pictures. Okay. And it talks about the optimal time to use it, what kinds of synergistic things you can do with sauna to optimize your detox response. But with that, our company, and I organize this on my side. So we kind of separate church and state here at Therisage. I manage the device development team and engineering part, and also the health science part. And so we have a team of health practitioners, and we offer a free coaching service. So when you buy a sauna, you can get onto our website on the top and make an appointment. It's free for a 15 to half an hour consult, where we take that broad brushstroke of starting reference point in the guide, and then we dial it in based on your personal needs. Because all of us are different, and how our bodies interpret infrared sauna and sunlight or sun energy is different. Mm-hmm. And we're living in a pretty toxic environment in general. And so we're sort of cognizant coming in that everybody's coming in at a little different level of toxicity. And because we want to make sure that people have a great experience and really realize their personal health goals, whatever that be. It could be a chronic challenge, or it could be, hey, I'm a biohacker and I'm strong as a bull and I want to stay strong and not have to deal with hospitals and clinics and all that stuff, So it will never replace, by the way, you and what you guys do in your clinic. These are all adjunct ways to maintain optimal health, which is super, super important. And I'm sure you've probably seen this because you guys are one of the places that actually fix people. And so you don't have to worry about people standing online to get into your practice to know what you guys are doing, because when you fix people, that is what I consider a more personal and original approach to the normal sort of Western allopathic approach. You don't want to keep people sick. You want to get them well. And basically that goes viral, because when I find out that your clinic is one that fixes people, then I just want to send everyone I know there. So that's the goal. All right. So your question, which was, I forget now.
Well, now I'm drawing a blank because I was moving on to the next. No,
Yeah.
it was about the infrared sauna. I had it written down and I crossed it out. But let's go into the usage now of the infrared sauna, right, for a normal person. Yeah. And I also want to talk about the question I had next was for someone, let's say like a Lyme patient that is getting therapy already, right? So okay. That was the split here. Yeah.
Let's start off with the basics. So with that optimal health guide, it gives you a startup, and the startup goal for the first few weeks would be the starting temperature, default temperature, which is 125 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. Now, that being said, honestly, if you came into my clinic and you presented yourself as someone that was somewhat fragile with symptoms, your protocol might be maybe 115 or 120 degrees for only 15 or 20 minutes for the first week. And rather than doing it every day, which is what I would prefer, we might start you at 3 days a week. And then the second week, graduate to 5 days a week. So what we tried to do, which I might be showing my either age or dating myself in a way, there's, as good as you and I might be as practitioners, health coaches, or doctors, the best doctor on the planet is the doctor and the little voice that's inside each one of us. Unfortunately, most of us ignore that voice. Okay. And what I try to do in our coaching service is to get people to be more sensitive to that voice. And I'll tell you how that plays out. So let's say your goal is 130 for 30 minutes, right? But you get into the sauna and for some reason today you're starting to feel a little symptomatic, or what we call a detox response, which would be lightheadedness, dizziness, nausea, headaches, vision, hearing impairment slightly. Could be a histamine response, which might be a blemish or a rash appearing on your skin. These are very common in the detox world. And again, we assume everybody's toxic. So the perfect analogy would be if I was your swimming coach and you were deathly afraid of swimming and that you were going to drown, I wouldn't throw you into the deep end of the pool without a life preserver, tell you that I was going to go get a Starbucks, be back in a half hour, and expect you to survive. We kind of go low and slow. And we try to get you to tune into what your body's saying. So for instance, another live example, let's say you're perfectly primed and you're doing 130 for 30 and you're ready to kind of go on to the next step. And then you go out tonight for dinner and you have a meal and you don't realize, because you can't taste it in the meal, that the chef was using some oil that was just turning rancid. And so you actually ingested a whole bunch of mycotoxins. So your toxic level actually went up. But I don't know about you, I have no meter on somewhere on my body that shows me my toxic level,
Nope.
The only way we know is when the body actually gives us some kind of sign. And the sauna will do that because, as we were saying earlier, the reason why I centered on infrared sauna is because these wavelengths, when it creates that resonance or that vibration, it actually breaks all of the covalent bonds between where the toxin is being held in the body and your tissues or your organ, muscle mass, wherever. It breaks that bond, and now the actual toxin cascades into your interstitial fluid or your bloodstream, okay, which is really priming your body to filter it to get out. And we have primal filtering organs, your liver, pancreas, large intestine, kidneys, your lymphatic system. These are all designed to grab toxins and pull them out. Anyway, so I would love to have you tune into that part of you, that inner voice. And we only know that when we get tested. And so what we do on our coaching service is we actually track you for 8 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we have a quick little call, 15 minutes. How are you doing? Tell me what's going on for you. Are you experiencing a detox responses? And if you have a detox response, and let's say it's our live example, the next day you get up and you're 20 minutes into your 30-minute session, you start feeling a little uncomfortable. I don't do what they do in gym class, at least what they did in my gym class when I grew up. No pain, no gain. No, it doesn't work that way in the detox world. Yeah. When you're feeling that symptom, your body is telling you that you've now dumped a whole bunch of new toxins into your bloodstream. Your bloodstream is a closed system. It gets up to your brain within a minute or so, and your brain responds to a higher level of toxicity by acting woozy or disoriented. Hence lightheadedness, dizziness, nausea, okay? And when you feel that way, the idea isn't to continue to keep dumping more toxins into your bloodstream. You stop your session, you drink a second glass of water, which is 8 to 10 ounces, that dilutes the toxic burden in your body. And then usually that feeling dissipates within, maybe 5 minutes or so. And then you hit it again, either later that day or the next day. And usually, you peck away at that toxic load or that little toxic hurdle. And usually by the next day it's gone, or maybe one day after. And then you're back on the road to, whatever our treatment plan is that we work through. So generally it's a broad protocol, 3 to 5 days a week. The goal is 30 to 30 minutes at 1:30, give or take 5 degrees. If you're a little more fragile, it might be 3 days a week at 115 or 120 for maybe 20 minutes. And then we sort of dial up to that 130. We kind of stay there, see the body stabilize. And then after that, we can really start, diving in deep. So for an advanced person that's chronic like Lyme, it may take us 6 to 8 weeks before they can be in sauna for 45 minutes at 150 to 160 degrees. It really depends on you and how your body interprets it. And that's the individual part of what we do in our practice, because as we're all special, and we're not looking to homogenize and get a 1-a-day vitamin out of this process. We're looking to show you all the rules, guide you for something like 6 to 8 weeks, get you in the cockpit of the plane long enough so you feel comfortable flying the plane, you have no fear. And then we sort of kind of fade away into the background. We'll always be there to support you if you have a challenge, but we really want to arm you with all the information and education so that you can really, understand the power of sauna and always, depend or use the sauna as it serves you so that you achieve your optimal health.
Yeah, we are all so unique, and we have to take that into consideration when we ask these types of things. What should I do, right? You're going to be so different than the next person. And you got to be able to understand who you are and utilize that intuition and that knowledge of yourself, that inner intelligence that guides you through that process. And, a big part of what we do and what everyone should be looking at is detoxification. And that's cleansing of the biological terrain, the inner milieu. And a big part of that also is pH, right? The pH balance in the body, which is usually out of whack, a lot of times very acidic with a lot, and that invites pathogens. So how does infrared affect the pH levels in the body?
Great question. Again, wow, you're really knocking the leather off. All right, so many of the toxins that our body holds are actually acidic in nature. Mm-hmm. So when earlier I just mentioned that the vibration actually breaks apart the bond between the toxin and where the body is stored, how it's stored. So now when you break that toxin out, that is actually moving your blood from being alkaline or neutral, like let's say 7.0 or a little bit higher than 7.0 pH, the toxin will move it more towards being acidic, like you mentioned, which as you also mentioned, is the prime environment that fosters pathogens and all kinds of systemic diseases. So alkaline water or anything you can do to actually shift your blood pH towards being more alkaline is a great long-term plan for health and wellness. And so how we approach is through the detox process and getting rid of the toxins, we're actually getting rid of the acidic part of that covalent bond, which actually inherently will drive your bloodstream to be more alkaline. We also support that by offering different kinds of healthy stacks or hacks that, and one would be drinking alkaline water. I've had the benefit of actually having a private audience with Dr. Jerry Pollack, who wrote The Fourth Phase of Water, who found that, discovered that water has 4 phases, or actually we know it as 3 phases, which would be gas, liquid, or solid. What he discovered was the water inside our body actually acts differently. That's the 4th phase of water. And it's influenced, the way that phase of water in the body is influenced to create that evacuation zone, he calls it, is basically by using infrared frequencies. That's where the hinge was. And so meeting Dr. Pollack inspired Therisage and myself to develop a water filtration system that actually pulls out particulates and fluorides and chemicals and chlorines and all that, but it puts in energy structure, which is what light frequencies do. And structured water is basically the ticket to good cell health.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's the one thing I've always said, it's not enough to filter water. And we're so, we are 70% water. The earth is so much water. It's about structured water that is then somewhat bioavailable, is useful to the body. Because water is just otherwise, it's just wet water and kind of comes in and out and doesn't do what it needs to do in the body. And people need to get that. So I'm really happy you brought that up with the structuring of water in that solution. And another solution that, go ahead.
No, it takes the infrared frequencies actually to structure the water. So we were already there. I just didn't understand until I actually sat with Dr. Pollack and read his book, how impactful. I'm always searching for the micro reasons why our technology works. Clinically, I know hands down all the ways that our sauna and infrared full spectrum can work. But what are the mechanisms? And one of the big ones, discoveries, was just the restructuring that the frequencies will do, and full spectrum does with our sauna.
Right. And another thing that you guys have constructed and utilized, that we utilize again in the medical field and also at our clinic, is an oxidative therapy and the use of ozone. And you've created ozone generators. Can you go into that, what ozone is, its usefulness, and the products you've created that can create ozone?
Okay, so let me talk about a little concept that I came up with. Now it's about 5 years ago. And it was really just, I said, okay, I have you in my sauna for a half hour for weight loss or detox or whatever. And I thought, wow, what a brilliant time. I mean, I don't know when you do sauna, but for me, it's the wee hours in the morning. I usually get up around 4:30 or 5, and the world hasn't woken up yet. I can get in the sauna, I can meditate, I can set my intentions and think about what I'm grateful for and ask for forgiveness. And I usually spend way too much time on the forgiveness part, by the way.
It's a good thing.
I've discovered, I thought to myself, if I looked at a wagon wheel and the sauna was the hub of the wagon wheel, what would the spokes look like? What are the various hacks or interventions I can introduce into that sauna experience for that half hour while I have you sort of as a captive audience that can really enhance your wellness journey? And once I started to think about that and unpack that, I thought, wow, we could bring extra oxygen, ozone in. We could bring aromatherapy, which is essential oils, in. We could bring in guided meditation. We could bring in certain breathing devices, which we've developed too here. And so ozone basically is an extra O, or O3. It's extra oxygen or enhanced oxygen. Now, why is that important? And how does that work in the scheme of things? Well, one of the reasons why we age is from oxidative stress. As we get older, our body or our blood's ability to hold on to oxygen starts to diminish. Now, one of the mechanisms that the body has is we produce one of 3 transient gases that's called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide vasodilates, it expands the little vessels. It also triggers your blood to grab more oxygen when you make it available. So a brilliant stack or synergistic hack would be infrared sauna or nitric oxide and oxygen, because then we're giving the body what it needs and what we start making less of as we get older. It's why we age. So it was brilliant for me to just develop we actually have 2 ozone devices that we made. And if you Google or research ozone, it'll tell you right up front, and FDA makes a point of telling us how caustic or potentially irritable the unstable O3 can be to the body, particularly to your breathing pathways. And so I want to make a clear distinction here between a breathable format of ozone and what's called clinical grade ozone, where you can really dial up the gamma or the concentration of pure oxygen in the mix of the ozone, which can be used medicinally for a lot of different things. Intravenously, it can be used insufflation. You can use clinical. I have a clinical grade ozone device upstairs, and I tapped it into my shower water head so that actually water comes out. It's ozonated. You can bubble it into your bath water. There's a whole bunch of applications. Right. But the clinical, you can actually you can dial in and regulate the concentration. Our approach is a little different. It's sort of unique. I developed a special little light bulb or fixture that sits inside. We have 2 formats. One we call the Thera O3. I noticed it's kind of behind you.
Right there.
Yep. And it's what we call a breathable format, because what it does is in the back of the device, there's a little fan that pulls the air, which is O2 from the room, over the light bulb or the light fixture. When it goes over the fixture, that fixture is actually splitting the O2 into 2 very unstable O1s. So now we've got O1 and O1 makes O2, that's oxygen. And then when it comes out the front, it's now coming into your room air, which is O2, and that unstable O1 marries up with an O2 and gives you your O3, which is your ozone. So it's a very, very low gamma in what I call breathable format. So if you put it on the ozone function, you can actually put it to your nose. And some people that have breathing challenges, they may cough a little bit. Of course, that's your first sign that it's not good for you. That's the irritant side. But for the most part, you just pull it a little bit away from your face. What we've done, and we've actually done studies and tested this in the lab, the Tri-Light system has the near infrared frequency, and the red light, and they will actually generate nitric oxide naturally. Or you could take a nitric oxide supplement, which is generally derived from an organic beet formulation. The one that we love is NO2, the number 2U. It used to be called Neo40, but the inventor, love Nathan Bryan, is one of my favorite guys. So Dr. Bryan, you just take the lozenge that gives you NO or nitric oxide. Now you need to introduce oxygen into your environment. And so this is the beauty. You're in the sauna, the red lights or the lozenge gives you nitric oxide in your blood. Now your blood is primed to get that extra oxygen. Once you start to perspire or sweat, your skin becomes a breathing organ. So you're sweating out toxins and you now can breathe in things. And so we make this little device, you put it down on the floor of the sauna and it's producing O3, and that's coming right through your skin, directly right into your bloodstream. So other than your nose and your mouth, the only way we get, oxygen into our blood is basically through our skin. And so we're initiating a physiological event just by being in sauna, just by having that red light or nitric oxide, and now introducing more oxygen. So guess what we did? And you could try this if you'd like. We just put an oximeter on your finger. You measure your blood oxygen level before you go into sauna for like 8 minutes. And you'll see your level go from 97, 98. I don't know when you've seen 100 score, but I'm getting hundreds when 100 scores. So I'm getting a full, complete blood oxygenation therapy just by that stack. It's anti-aging. Also, most chronic ailments like fibromyalgia, even Lyme, parasites, mold, these are anaerobic. These organisms are anaerobic and they hate elevated core temperature, raising your core by sauna. That's hypothermia. and oxygen. Give them oxygen, and there's a natural die-off. So there's actually a concern about that, because if you're a Lyme patient, even though I know ozone therapy is a good therapy, or hyperbaric or oxygen therapy would be a good therapy for you, it wouldn't be something I would necessarily introduce on day one. My first goal would be to lower your toxic burden, because if you're a Lyme patient and you're already symptomatic, you're already toxic. We know that.
Absolutely.
So lower the burden, get you, that goblet inside of you that shows you your toxic level, get it half full. I'm an optimist. Get it half full, and then do something that will go after creating another toxic event, which would be adding ozone in. Then we're just filling that goblet up a little bit, but we're not making you more symptomatic in the process, which we're always concerned about compromising your health in the process of getting better.
And tell us a little bit about the other ozone, because that also serves a pretty good purpose and kind of as a disinfectant, you can almost say, against a lot of the foods you eat, or, other ways to also introduce ozone into your body or utilize it in a beneficial way.
Yeah, that one we call the bubbler.
Yep.
And it's a device that sits on the counter or on the floor, or whatever. And it has a hose that comes off, and it comes with a small little insufflation device, and also comes with two air zones, similar to the kind that you probably had in your fish tank, or either now or when you were a kid. And it basically bubbles the air or the ozone that's coming out of the device. It does have a set gamma. It's a little bit stronger. So when I breathe that right out of the tube, I will cough. Where the little O3 device, the handheld device, portable, I will not cough. So that's a little bit more breathable, or less caustic or irritable or irritant. So what we've done, the first approach, and actually I'm smart about some things. This was just universe timing. We actually started developing that and brought it to market about maybe 6 to 8 months before COVID became prevalent in the US. And so there's many ozone is really nature's disinfectant, is, the way it's used. And in the atmosphere, ozone doesn't actually get into our atmosphere, because the ozone layer of a stratosphere keeps it from coming in, because there are areas of ozone, again, it's not good for regular breathing. And so we've developed what nature has given us. And one of these simple applications is just put the bubbler near your kitchen sink, fill it halfway, float your vegetables. And actually, we actually ozonate all of our foods, because between pesticides and various different insects and bacteria, including viruses, mold, the bubbler will get rid of all of that. And then the other methods would be like your bath water. So rather than sauna, you could fill your bath with magnesium or Epsom salt, something like that, and then put the air stone. You don't put the bubble device, because it's plugged into the wall. You wouldn't put it on the edge of the tub, but you put it on the floor, and then you just drape the hose over. You bubble down by your toes the ozone. Within 5 minutes, the water that you're bathing in is going to be ozonated. And then, just like the sauna, your skin, because it's hydrated, being in the tub, it's now bringing that extra oxygen right through your skin, right into your bloodstream. Amazing therapy, amazing anti-aging, terrific. So there are lots of applications. I bubble water and I drink it at least once a day. You can ozonate oil and put it on your skin, or put it on your salad. That's area to hold. I disinfect my toothbrush. I keep an extra bubbler up in my bathroom. And so as I'm running my sink water, I just take my toothbrush and I put that, and I use an electric shaver, and I also bubble and disinfect that. So when you start to think about it, there's a lot of easy things. Like when COVID was really, really active, and even today, you can bubble water, put in a spritzer bottle, and spray down your food, spray down packages, spray your countertop. This ozone is truly amazing, and it's not chemical based. This is nature. So
that's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's all natural. People always say you got to use Lysol, which is all these different things that are really bad for the body. You're just introducing more toxicity in a way that will weaken you and make you more prevalent to getting something like COVID in a way. So it's really counter to what a lot of people think. But I know at the clinic, we utilize the ozone as a spray also to disinfect. And then we also use UV light, of course, is wonderful. Right. And these are just therapies we're using anyway. Ultraviolet blood irradiation therapy therapy, ozone therapy have been around for so long, and there's so many benefits, and they are natural ways. So it's great to see. I love this because I always say, I want to find companies that are representing what we're doing in the clinical aspect of it, but make it available so you can utilize it at home. Because we know you only have maybe an hour or two a week with us in the clinic. What are you doing with the rest of that time? You know, all those hours that you could be utilizing something like this at home. So to hear that you could utilize ozone now at home in all these different ways, you can utilize light therapy, infrared at home. It's really great because it opens up the door of what you thought was only in clinics and top clinics and makes it readily available to everyone.
Sure.
So it's really cool.
You know, with our own journey with our daughter, some months we were spending excess of $30,000 between traveling from Florida to New York, the price of medications, the hospital and clinic fees and all that. I mean, it's mind-boggling how much money was involved in back in the day that wasn't covered by insurance. So this was all out of pocket. So part of Therisage, part of my journey, is to bring devices that are incredibly effective at a reasonable price so that people can understand that they can have these in their homes. Again, I have to reiterate, it'll never take the place of you. It'll never take the place of an intuitive practitioner that will give you hints and help you navigate yourself back to good health. But the idea, like you said, I mean, 99% of the time, it's you and your family that's supporting you. 1% of the time, if you're lucky, you're seeing your practitioner to give you some help. I mean, now we're living in a more virtual world with telemed. So people have a little bit more access to great research and great minds, plus what they can search on the internet. But the idea that you can get these devices and they're affordable and you get them in your home, and you can actually do a lot of this prep work and a lot of the foundational, what I call primal healing. You can get that. You can do that as a family, a parent teaching their child and the child teaching their next family generation. That's really kind of where I stay heart-centered in the educational didactic side of our implementation here.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly synergistic. Why wouldn't you want to make a sanctuary where you live as well, and then get the medical treatments that are catalyst to everything, but then go back to your healing sanctuary and just continue that healing journey rather than a lot of people step back. They go into an environment that's probably somewhat toxic. They get their treatment, 2 steps forward, go home, stress about things, 1 step back. Right. Instead, what if you could take 1 step forward again? That's 3 steps, right? That It just makes sense to me. So I mean, we always advise patients to take as much of this home with them and apply the techniques, the technology, everything else.
It's also generational. Like my parents, when I used to ask them, Dad, Mom, who's in charge of your healthcare? They'd say, oh, Dr. Johnson. I go, what? Now my generation was sort of mixed. The younger generation now, they say, I'm in charge. Like I'm in charge of my destiny. Yay. Right. Yep. So really my job, at least from Therasage's point of view, is to try as best I can to be with you, to use your platform, to that's why I'm so honored that we're having this discussion today, because hopefully we'll touch some lives and make a difference, turn ahead, make people understand that they can, find these devices, they can utilize them at home, and they can improve their own health. They can take more of it back and take more responsibility for it.
It's empowering. That's really the bottom line. Where so many put their complete trust and all their power in the past in a practitioner, and usually that practitioner would be a conventional minded doctor who may just write a prescription, let's see how this goes, right? And you just sit back and hope it goes well. Most of the time, unfortunately, it wouldn't. But now you have so much more power, which is a beautiful thing right now in medicine, because it is changing. The power is shifting back to the people in a sense, and good doctors are always trying to empower them, not trying to strip them of that. So I love everything that is going on, what you're doing. And I had the pleasure of listening to you give a talk in Miami at the Biohacking Congress there. And I was sitting there and thinking of questions even then of what you were talking about. And one of the things you were talking about that's incredibly prevalent right now is EMF. And I'm surrounded right now. If you looked around, there's just wires literally everywhere. There's a big light here, everything. There's probably so much EMF going on. But, you brought up the good point of connecting EMF and pathogens, especially things like parasite, Borrelia, Lyme disease. Can you go into that a little bit more and what we should know about electromagnetic pollution and these types of pathogenic, infectious diseases?
Great question. So maybe 17 years ago, I had a notion, and that was anything that plugs into a wall or alternating current, AC current, or is battery operated will generate a magnetic field. Mm-hmm. So how do these fields interrupt our normal body battery or our body energy fields? So 17 years ago, the cell phone industry, the Bluetooth, wireless, everything industry was not quite as pervasive as it is today. We were probably just at 3G. Now we're at 5G. For those of people listening, the military is using 7 and 10G today. So when you look at a cell tower, you think it's just maybe 5G, but in fact, they're communicating even at a higher level frequency. Those frequencies oscillate. They go back and forth at a much higher frequency than our body frequency. So the challenge there is that when our body gets in the way of an EMF, one of these frequencies, the frequency goes through us. And oftentimes our biology actually holds and harbors, our tissues hold that energy, that wavelength, and it's oscillating up here when our body is normally oscillating down here, our body energy. For those tuning in, our neurological system is an electrical system. And so body battery, body energy, body electric is a very, very prevalent topic. And these 5G, 7, 10G, these networks that the body harbors those frequencies disrupts our own body frequency. So now let's even dive a little deeper on this one. There's a practitioner on the West Coast, his name is Dr. Deidre Clinghart. He did a blood study. I mentioned this in my talk, I believe, that he actually analyzed the blood of people that lived in the Pacific Northwest, in the urban areas and in the rural areas. And the blood, the microtoxin, which is a byproduct of microbial work. So a microorganism, let's say a Lyme disease, a parasite, the co-infections, they're little organisms, they're sort of perfect organisms. They only know 3 things: how to multiply or replicate, how to use your body resources, because they're basically taking your pre-digested or digested food and or minerals and life source. They're taking that, and they poop. That's their whole existence. There's nothing more to it. They're not really intellectual about it, We've created perfect storms in our bodies, but what we noticed was that if we can change your body chemistry so that you're not a perfect host anymore, eventually these organisms have life cycles and they die off. And that's how your immune system gets stronger and you start to win. I'm sure you in just looking at some of your Lyme approaches, you really study and you dive into this pretty deep in your clinic. And I applaud you for that, because not many Lyme groups actually take a multidiscipline approach as you guys do. And I think that that's what you need to do. It's an integrated view in order for really to get to it. And that also includes emotional healing. We always forget about that one. So what happens, what we noticed in Klinghart's study was that in the rural areas or let's say the city areas, the urban areas, the blood concentration of microtoxins, which means the activity of the microbial effects of these little bugs, was 80 to 90 times greater, that poison, that toxin in the blood, than those in the rural areas. Well, if they're eating the same food, drinking the same water, and breathing the same air, basically because it's the same area, what is the real difference between the urban area and the rural area? The concentration of cell towers. Mm. These wavelengths that are energizing the bugs. That's why they're replicating more, they're pooping more. That's what's measurable in your blood. And so EMF, electromagnetic fields, exogenous man-made frequencies, not made by nature, actually will energize the bug, and actually kind of suppress your immune system at the same time. The worst combination you can imagine. And so So way back when, 17 years ago, I wasn't that smart. And certainly the cell phone business and wireless everything business wasn't quite as expansive as it is today. But I did have the notion. My notion was, if you're in my sauna and my sauna plugs into an outlet, I am generating an EMF. And so what's your body conflict? That was what I was focusing on. Will your body protect you against an EMF and collapse your biofield to protect you? Or, and so you can get the, or will you just receive the infrared frequencies from sunlight that has no EMF attached to it? What's it going to do if it had to choose? Frankly, I didn't know the answer. But what I did know, if I took EMF off the table, there wouldn't be a conflict. And so I actually schooled myself 17 years ago how to shield and block EMF from in our environment in every device that we make here at Therisage. But that wasn't enough for me, and I'll tell you why. Because shielding and blocking is really reactive, meaning they come out with 3G, I dial up the formula to block and shield and so forth. And by the time I get that integrated into your home, they're coming out with 4G. And then I dial that up, now they're coming out with 5G and so forth. So I was really looking for something proactive, and that's actually the opus of a lot of my research now. And we've created what we call a hologram, which is a sort of a material that will actually hold a frequency, and we imprint close to 200 frequencies on these holograms that will bring you the earth charge, will bring you the esophageal and the Schumann frequencies. And so that will balance out and support your biofield. So we shield, block, and now we harmonize. So we're actually supporting your body energy, okay, and creating I feel like it's almost like Captain America. I'm walking around with this sort of shield and bubble around me that will protect me and make me somewhat sort of impervious from 5 to 10G, a whole room full of computers. And so we install that technology on all of our devices, and I feel so strongly about it, we broke it out as a separate commodity in a sense that we sell. So you can put a sticker or a hologram on your phone or your laptop. You can put one in your Tesla battery operated car, all these places, all the niceties of technology that we want to enjoy in a safe manner in terms of your healthcare. So, really interesting, because we've worked with a company called U-Matrix, and we worked with someone called Pierre Nicolas out of France, who's been studying EMFs for a while too. And what he found to be the best solution is exactly what you're talking about, making something with biocompatible and a hologram, form that is able to then change the spin around you, the vortex of things, to then take that sinusoidal man-made wave and transform it into something that's good for you, just like nature does. And exactly. So, so much of, I feel like the EMF industry or protection is about blocking, building Faraday cages almost around us. And, not to knock it, but I heard Dr. McCall at another biohacking conference with Dave Ashbrain. He was talking about sleeping in this silver tent and, cutting you off and going in and checking the E-meter and showing it at zero. But, I wanted to raise my hand. He wasn't taking questions, but say, what about the good waves? We can't sit in a Faraday cage and expect ourselves to regenerate that way. We need those wavelengths. We need certain frequencies in there. So I think, the way you're going about it, and this other company and others are now starting to see, it's not about cutting ourselves off completely from any frequencies and living in a kind of a bubble, let's say, because we require that both cosmic and telluric, with the Schumann waves frequencies for our cells to communicate properly and regenerate. Right. Absolutely. And people miss that, and they're trying to always block something where it's more about transmuting and transforming. And I think that is the future of, what we should be doing as far as trying to protect ourselves or even harmonize our environments. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And really what it is back to that primal healing and the way nature intended us to be. And right now the conflict is modern technology versus primal healing and, nature in its closest form.
And here's another thing I heard that I've written a lot about and get a lot of heat on also between nature and man-made is sun versus sunscreen, let's say. I think we've gotten to a point where we've really demonized the sun and seen it as a cause of cancer, and especially skin cancer. and we've put this toxic sunscreens on an altar as the solution, when I believe it's truly the problem. Since you've introduced sunscreen into the mainstream, society as a whole, we've seen skin cancer rates just, go dramatically up. I wanted to hear a little bit on your thoughts. You agree with that? Do you find the sun to be something that's healing, or something we should be a little bit cautious about?
Again, great question. I'm in South Florida, and so here you don't go anywhere unless you lube up, which
Yes.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Actually, in nature, it's an interesting balance, but vitamin D and the overexposure to sunlight comes from the UV spectrum. There are 3 wavelengths in the UV spectrum: UV, A, B, and C. UVC doesn't even get into our atmosphere. That's the one that you mentioned earlier that you use in clinic to sterilize. So it's used like when Ebola came out in hospitals and they had these robots go in with lights, and that was UVC. UVA and B, though, do come into our atmosphere. They do initiate the process of making vitamin D. So when sunlight comes and touches your skin, it's in a D1 form. As it touches your skin, that becomes D2. And then just like plants, we have a biochemical process like photosynthesis that converts D2 into D3, which is the usable form of D. Now, again, another great health stack: get your vitamin D3 level up to 85 and 100, and you're going to drive pathogens out of your body. The FDA will say 35 to 50. That keeps you subpar, and so you're always chasing your tail. And so I'm big on vitamin D. You need, and this is generally the barometer. And actually, there's a website you can go to called, a app you can get on your smartphone that's called D-Minder, D-M-I-N-D-E-R. It's a free app. And you just dial in, it links to your GPS, which means it'll actually synchronize to where you're located, where you're holding your phone, and the azimuth or the direction of the sun to where you're staying at any point in time on the earth while you have your phone on you. And it will calculate exactly how much sunlight you need in order for you to get the maximum amount of vitamin D every day. Takes the thinking out of it. Of course, you have to have skin exposed because your skin is a photoreceptor. But my thoughts on it are exactly your thoughts. The sun will heal you from carcinomas, and we've proven that in clinic, even with our own work. So we've recreated sort of what sun does. What we did was we took 2 they're like sun tanning beds, and we stripped out the electronics and we stripped out the bulbs that would normally make you tan. One we fitted with all UV frequencies, cherry-picked, because there are some UV frequencies between 420 and 440 that will actually, if you get overexposed to them, they will alter your DNA, your RNA, your genetic material. And so, but just like nature, and this is what I love about it, whatever you do in overexposure to UV light, you can heal using infrared light. You just have to stay in the sun long enough, and we don't do that in our modern world these days. And so what I did, and I did this for a therapy for Lyme, was I outrigged one of these beds, these light beds with UV, a cocktail of different frequencies, and we put electronics that would spark the argon bulbs at more than, I think it's like 300,000 sparks per minute, which emulates the sun's amount of photon energy. And so you go in the UV bed and you get what you needed in that light. And then you go to the infrared bed, which was right across the aisle. And so whatever you might have gotten overexposed to on UV, you healed with the infrared spectrum. And there, it was just the way like nature intended us to have it. And we were fixing many of the challenges that people would have with skin, overexposure to skin damage, carcinomas, all these different kinds of things. But again, I'm, different, maybe you are too, than most out there. We do recommend using sunscreen, but we want you to get at least 30 minutes of natural sunlight before you lather up. And the sunscreens you get, don't buy like at Walgreens over the counter. And if you use them, I'm not coming from a place of judgment, but if you look at some of the ingredients on the labels, you'll see that most of the chemicals used are carcinogenic. And as you mentioned earlier, they will be causing more of a problem than what they're saving you. So remember, when you put a sunblock on, you're blocking all the light frequencies, not just the bad ones. And like you mentioned earlier, we need these frequencies just in the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. Nature gave us these frequencies because we need them every day to be healthy. So, this is a brilliant example. Do you have any pets at home?
I don't. Used to have a dog. Used to have a beautiful golden retriever.
All right. Now, do you remember ever Sunday morning, your dog lays on its dog bed, wherever, and then you open up the screen or the light, and then the dog meanders from the dog bed, kind of goes over to the window. If you open the door, they go out, but then they're kind of sitting in the sun and they're kind of doing one of these things, rolling all around.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. They love it. They love it.
All right. So did you teach your Goldie how to do that?
No.
Okay. So why are they so smart and we're kind of so stupid about it? Right?
Good question.
This is, watch a child that's got no inhibitors. Watch an animal and see how they perform as they interact with nature. That's the story. And that's really what I focus a lot of my research on, is either looking at ancient cultures and seeing what they adapted in their health-minded protocols, and or watching nature and see how the plant and animal kingdom interact with the various different life resources that are available. And then we try to integrate them either in our protocols or hacks, stacks, and in our development of our devices here.
Why do you think it is that dermatologists have taken such a hard stance that you require to put on sunscreen, and usually ones with oxybenzene, all these, carcinogens and endocrine disruptors? And no, these aren't like, there's tons of studies out there. Is this something of an industry kind of, forcing the medical side to kind of obey in a sense, or training them and brainwashing them almost? Because listen, I once posted about what's in sunscreen, right? And showed all the studies about it. And there were so many dermatologists that basically said, you're killing people. Stop it. They need to lather this on. I was like, you guys are medical professionals here. Let's be honest. What is it?
I was wondering how much hate mail you got from that.
Yeah, a lot.
I really want to dive deep in this one, but my probably our legal counsel and my partners and board of directors would be saying, let's shy back. I think let's go away from the dermatology and just look at the dental industry. It was a normal practice with fluorides and things that are used there that we're discovering now aren't necessarily the most beneficial. Even the amalgams using metals and so forth, I think it's the same kind of thing. Back then, again, we didn't have a lot of the other things going on in the world that we have now in our toxic environment. We didn't have chemtrails and glyphosates, and all that stuff. And so I think it's just one other stressor that we're all living with these days. I think there's a better way to do it. I'm not suggesting at all that you should not lather up, but if you do, be mindful and look for a formulation that at least the ingredients are healthy for you, and understand that you don't want to block light frequencies, not all. If you're a sun worshiper, I get it, but at least get that half hour, of natural sun, or get that little program that's free to tell you how much you need in order for you to get what your body needs in order for you to be vibrant and healthy every day, and then lather up, So that's kind of my position. I'm sort of like on the fence. I know what's bad for you. And I think that it's just a paradigm. It was easily accepted. People bought it. We created this whole other industry called sun blockers, and now we're paying a little price because now that we're looking into it a little bit further, we can see that some of them aren't as beneficial or good for us. And, maybe that's setting up the stage for the next bunch of healthcare we might need, if you've got a conspiracy theory kind of mind, or maybe it's just the natural progression of the way that that kind of thinking, thinks,
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm a proponent of moderation in the sun, understanding who you are. If you're fair skinned, of course, don't go out somewhere in the Caribbean by the equator for 4 hours and expect not to get burned. That's just going to happen. And I am a big proponent of mineral based sunscreens without the endocrine disruptors and carcinogens. And yes, it's a little harder to apply, but, I think it pays off in the end. However, it's an interesting time that we've demonized things that are truly healing. And then we've created solutions that are making us sick to it. So just some thoughts. Dr. Besner, what's next for you? What are you excited about? What is Therisage kind of jumping into that you could share with us?
Well, earlier I was talking about our Tri-Light system. The two biggest research areas that we're working on is this imprinting hologram, the harmonizing stuff that I mentioned. So that's really fantastic, inexpensive, and is just amazing. The other area is the Tri-Light system. I'm kind of one of these people that see the world through contrast. So, like for instance, I'm married more than 40 years, and my wife and I hardly agree on anything, but she defines me. So basically, by that contrast, it helps me understand, if I have to fight really hard to get something get something done here in the house, the harder I fight, the more defined I am, the better I know myself and that I need this. Otherwise, I let it go because she's basically right. I think she's been wrong twice in 40 years, So, so the Tri-Light system there, as a device developer, I started looking at the LED industry, light emitting devices, or diodes, light emitting diodes. And most of the LEDs that are out there that are used in red light and near frequency devices, they're what's called monochromatic, which means a single bulb generating a single frequency. I look at that from a physics point of view, and I just said, engineering, why? Yeah. Why does it have to have only one frequency? And so about 18 months ago, I developed a light LED, a light emitting diode that has 3 wavelengths in each diode. And so I can power that diode, and I can generate 3 times the photon energy that a normal, so mine's are polychromatic, meaning more than one frequency per bulb. And I cherry pick those frequencies. So one's a red light frequency and the other 2 invisible light frequencies that are the near spectrum. And we mount those on the inside of our sauna. Why did I do that? Because that spectrum of frequencies help with mitochondrial stress and also the lack of oxygen. So the microbial imbalances that we covered a little earlier in our discussion. If I could enhance the blood oxygenation level and also stimulate mitochondria, which is your cell energy, for people that have chronic ailments, they're generally flat on their back. And if you've got chronic fatigue, you can't hardly lift your head up. Epstein-Barr, that's a big one. We all have a little bit of these organisms, and inside of us, it's just the imbalance of that milieu or the microbiome that creates that symptom that it expresses it as we know it. And then we have names for it, like Lyme disease and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and all that. And so how do we come back a full circle? How do we address that and rebalance the biome? Well, certainly you can do it with some kinds of supplementation, probiotics, prebiotics, and so forth in your food sources, but you can also do it with natural light and oxygen, creating that more primal healing platform by which we had when we were kids. And there's a physics term called emissiveness. And that basically is defined as your cell or tissue's ability to capture and hold light frequency. And when we measure the emissivity of our LEDs that we developed on our Tri-Light panels, it's close to 99%. It's like 98.8, which means that we're generating a hell of a lot of light. It's penetrating through your skin and it's being held by your cell. And that's my end game. And so generally, most other comparative technologies are either monochromatic, and so they create the cocktail by array of 600, array of 800 nanometer, array of 900 nanometers, and that's how they create they underpower it so that they say to you, well, you got to stay 6 inches away. Well, the further you are away from that light source, the less amount of absorption of those light frequencies through your skin into your cells. And so our approach is completely different. We're highly powered. We are delivering 3 times the amount of light energy, and you can put our panels right on your body, so they go seamlessly right inside of you and get the maximum optimal result.
Yeah, I love it. I love that idea of applying light, which is energy, which is information to the body to correct it. And the body just knows what to do with it, right? And it's just so kind of simple, but I do think this is the future of where medicine, healing, optimization are going. And I think we have to embrace, and obviously you have. Where can people learn more about Therisage, buy the products, and then just find more information in general?
Well, the first place, easiest, is our website, therisage.com. So THERASAGE.com. We have an 800 number, 888 441. Sorry, I don't call my number often. 888-416-4441. You can you can email us at info@therisage.com. We have Instagram channels, Facebook channels. The Instagram channel is so fun. I mean, I actually are tracking your channel this morning, the one that you did with the football. That was just classic. I loved it. So when I see people on our Instagram channel that are just spending time to tell the story of how excited they are about things that we're developing, as a device developer, I can't think of anything that stokes me more, frankly. I'm really excited about that. You can get us, yeah. So that's basically the way. We have a YouTube channel also, and a sister YouTube channel that we call the Healthy Hotline, where I do interviews with a lot of my friends in the network that we've known over the years that are just talking about their, what makes them, high during the day and excited about their bodies of work. And they express that and tell people, and hopefully people learn from that. And, like your podcast and so forth, they're very informational. And these are generally the ways to get to us. We're very approachable. You can go on our website. You can make an appointment to tap into our coaching service and learn more about primal healing. And and then through podcasts and ways like this, we get a chance to get out there and tell people about what we know.
Well, I love everything you're doing. Really applaud all the work you're doing, and then and making social media something that's healthy, right? Because to see people doing healthy actions, sharing that, and getting other people to do them, I think that's where we need to go, because so much of social media is about the negativity, right? And kind of focusing on what we don't have, or, the envy, kind of lower frequencies, you could say, of consciousness. Whereas this, whenever I see and I look through your stuff, it's like, I love it. People are taking control, empowering themselves to heal. That's how it should be, and sharing that.
You know what? And they're doing something that what I think is a dying art. They're telling stories.
Yes.
Storytelling is just so important. My grandparents used to sit me down, and as a kid, like, all I wanted to do was go and play. And they would tell me about the old country, because my parents are first generation Americans. And so my grandparents came from Europe. And so as I'm an older guy, and I just remember, being like impatient, but I do remember them telling me stories that still sit with me today. And I remember my grandmother. I grew up in New York, and 0 to 3, I was in the Bronx. My grandmother used to take me by my hand as a little toddler, and we'd walk down Rochambeau Avenue and buy nickel pickles that were bigger than my head, But that, and her refrigerator had an ice block on top. There weren't leftovers. There weren't chemicals in foods. Everything you had was cooked fresh that day. And it's sad to say, but that generation sometimes outlived their kids, right?
Yep.
Mostly because as it kind of went further, it's not natural for a parent to live longer than their children. And so many of that stuff has been lost in translation. So storytelling is important, and being excited about good health and optimal health is super important. I love what you're doing. The whole biohacking community, stay strong, be strong, live strong. This is where I think things are going, and where I want to be positioned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, as much as people are seeing this kind of scary future to everything, and, where are things going, and we're in flux, I also see this movement of people who are truly looking to optimize their health, understanding health is wealth, and seeking out people like you and me and asking these questions. And I love that. I love that inquisitive kind of curiosity of a child. And, I always say, when people write me and just like question after question after question, it's always like, oh, I'm sorry, am I annoying you? Like, no, go ahead. I may not always have the time right now to answer, but I love that curiosity to say, how can I be better? How can I optimize my health be happier. And in doing so, probably impact the people around me to do that as well. And then it's just a domino effect. And then we could take back our health. And I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about, everything you're doing. So thank you so much again. Thank you for coming on the show. And I hope we can continue the discussion.
This is awesome. This was supposed to be a 20-minute interview, right? Something like that.
Yeah, just 20 times. Yeah, like 5 or 6. Dr. Besner, thank you so much.
Very welcome. Pleasure being here. Love what you guys are doing. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you.